Hello sports fans, I'm Marion Maneker and this is Artelligence. $2,145,000,000. That's how much money was spent in the November auctions of Impressionist, modern, and contemporary art in New York. Some people are saying that an enormous amount of money is not enough and the art market is in trouble. I don't think it is, and I'll explain why. But first, please like and subscribe to these videos. If you want to go deeper in these subjects, subscribe to the Artelligence newsletter at artelligence.substack.com. Now, let's get back to the art market. At $2.145 billion in total sales, the November auctions were down 30% from the year before. That's cause for concern. But markets don't go straight up, or down for that matter. That's not how they work. Over the last 3 years, the sales in New York in November have gone up and down. In 2021, the same sales made $2.5 billion. 2022 was $3.2 billion. And now we're back down under $2.15 billion. So this year's total is below the previous totals of the past 2 years. That explains why the Financial Times described the sales as flat, and the New York Times wondered whether we were in the midst of a dip, a trough, or just a blip. Before we get into that, let's pause to acknowledge that the art market is riding a wave of wealth transfer. That's not likely to stop anytime soon. There are a surprisingly large number of art collectors who are in their 80s, 90s, and even older. They have art worth tens and even hundreds of millions of dollars. These folks won't live forever. Some of them are even smart about how they're selling their art. They're not waiting until they die. They're selling art at a time and under conditions of their own choosing. For example, this season, just a bit more than a third of the total sales came from 7 art collections. The biggest was Emily Fisher Landau's $425 million sale. Next came a portion of the Dutch Triton collection, which made roughly $85 million. After that, we had film director and producer Ivan Reitman's art at $78 million. California collector Kara Schreier's estate sold for about $70 million. Record executive Jerry Moss had art that sold for $64 million. $48 million was paid for art dealer John Himes' collection. And Sanford Robertson sold some of the art he collected with his late wife Jean to make $27 million this season. Altogether, that was $748 million in art. These collections are putting a floor of supply under the market, and it appears there's plenty of demand to meet that supply. If that's the case, you're wondering, why was this November season down 30% from last season? Well, the answer to that is the extraordinary confluence of events that happened last year. First, Paul Allen was one of the richest men in the world. He had a passion for art and bought a great deal of the very best art. Collections of that size and quality are rare. His art sold for $1.6 billion last November. Compare that number, $1.6 billion, with the $748 million spent on estates this season. The difference, $900 million, accounts for almost all of the drop year over year. I'm not trying to sugarcoat some bad news. No one is saying the $2.145 billion this season wasn't a pullback. The thing is, it was expected. In fact, most people in the trade were surprised to see such a large number this November with everything that's been going on economically and politically. Rich people don't worry about whether they have enough money to buy art. They worry whether they might need the money they spend on art for something else in the future. Usually either to make more money from investments or to have money to outlast bad times. With China still in an economic slump, war in Ukraine and Gaza, jitters about the coming US elections, and dozens of other serious concerns, you would expect art to be the last priority on their list. Add to that the fact that 2022 seemed to be the year most of the pandemic stimulus money worked its way through the system and into the hands of art buyers. 2022 was a year to celebrate, but not one to try to replicate. If we go back before the pandemic, we can see that the November sales in 2017 were $2.3 billion. In 2018, they were $1.9 billion, and in 2019, they were $2.5 billion. That's an average of $2.2 billion a year, or a bit more than we saw this November. Over the 6 years from 2017 to 2023, Excluding the pandemic shutdown year of 2020, the average for these November sales was $2.4 billion. So at 2.145, it would seem New York sales held up pretty well. While we're talking through some numbers, let's add a few other interesting facts. The most valuable sector of the market is 20th century art. The total sales this season were $1.7 billion. Roughly $180 million of 19th century art sold in November, which is about 8% of the total. 21st century art accounted for 9% of sales, or $187 million. That's it for this video. We just wanted you to understand that although the market is coming down, that doesn't mean the sky is falling. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to follow the art market better, subscribe to the Artelligence newsletter at artelligence.substack.com, and we'll see you in the next video.